Philip Bloom just released his Sony a7S III review. It's actually titled Review of the Sony a7S III, the movie. And it's 1 hour and 14 minutes long. Where do I start? If you are interested in this camera, watching Philip's review will be the best use of your time you'll probably have this entire week. Now, I'm a little biased because I'm a big fan of the guy. Philip is amazing, but also he was generous enough to reach out to me and invite me to make a small contribution to his video. I was so inspired after watching the review last night that I wanted to make a short reaction video today and also maybe kind of trim things down just a little bit. So this video is 11 highlights from Philip Bloom's Sony a7S III review. I'm Luke with Wedding Film Coach, and as I mentioned, I'm featured alongside several other amazing content creators and talented filmmakers in Philip's a7S III review.
In a Sony a7S III,
It's gotta have 10-bit.
what don't I want?
True 4K resolution, no crop, 60 frames per second, 10-bit, 422.
To know that it cared.
To be featured alongside of Casey from Camera Conspiracies, Josh Yo from Make Art Now, Gerald Undone, and Matt Johnson, it's a huge honor. I'm really humbled. Thank you, Philip, so much. Now, go ahead and get some sleep, okay? Watching this is a beautiful and wonderful experience that you'll probably laugh out loud, and you'll find your mouth just hanging open from the incredible shots and thinking, how did he get this? So go watch it right now. But if you don't have that kind of time, I went ahead and put together these 11 highlights that are really important to me as a wedding filmmaker, and I thought they could help you as well. So let's get started with number 1. Rolling shutter. While filming weddings, unless you're really stylizing a specific look for the film, you will rarely perform a whip pan. And these are where you just literally pan the camera in a quick whip-like fashion. Usually when performing this move with any camera without a global shutter, but one that has a sensor readout from the top to the bottom, you get this wobbly effect known as rolling shutter. And some cameras are just horrible offenders. The A7S, the original A7S, this was one of the worst. But others have faster readouts from their sensors, and they're not as bad. The Sony a7S III, the new one, does a particularly good job at this. It improves the speed of its sensor readout to minimize this problem to where it's almost non-existent. For wedding films, you do occasionally have the situation where you're panning with a moving subject with the potential to cause rolling shutter. One example that comes to mind is maybe during a ceremony processional. If you have a bridesmaid that is walking particularly fast, maybe just because she's nervous, you can definitely run into that wobbly effect as you're panning with them, tracking them down the aisle. However, now with the new a7S III and its improved fast sensor readout, this will barely be a problem, and you'll be able to film with confidence, having much more usable shots, even in fast-paced situations. Before moving on, I wanted to let you know that I'll be producing a free camera guide for the Sony a7S III when it's released in September. If you want to be notified when that guide is available so you can quickly get better footage with less trial and error, go to freecameraguide.com and enter your info. That's freecameraguide.com for a free Sony a7S III guide. Now, on with the video. Number 2. Codecs and image quality. Philip does a great job of explaining codecs here. The recording modes, as a lot of people refer to them, are really exciting because they tell us a lot about the resolutions and the frame rates that we'll get access to, but I would dare say that most of us don't have a great understanding of the technical aspects of these codecs and what they actually mean for production value, and perhaps, more importantly, post-production workflow. If you only watch one section of Philip's videos, this might be the best one for your time. For wedding filmmakers, I think the enhanced codecs mean a couple of different things for us. First, just higher quality footage. The footage out of this camera is going to look better all the way around. Cleaner shadows, smoother highlights, and richer midtones. And all around just better color. And as a bonus, we'll also have the ability to color grade the footage more extensively And this will allow us to be more creative and make our footage more unique and dynamic. So all of that's a plus. Second, we'll have the use of slow motion at all resolutions. Effectively, this means now you don't have to decide between image quality, high resolution, and then slow motion. 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second are available in 4K resolution all the way across the board, still with 10-bit color depth and 422 chroma sampling. And all of that simply means that we don't have to sacrifice image quality for slow motion anymore. So for your next wedding, you'll be able to match all of your shots without scaling your resolution down or up. Number 3, low light and noise reduction issues. Philip featured some amazing and beautiful footage taken from one of his favorite places to shoot, Brighton Beach. The footage is absolutely stunning. Please go watch this. There is very little ambient light, yet all of the shots look really clean. But now, Philip does point to some issues where the camera introduces quite a bit of heavy noise reduction onto the footage that was shot at high ISOs. And admittedly, when examined closely, it doesn't look that great. There isn't a way to turn off noise reduction, and it makes the footage look kind of splotchy. There was one example clip shot at 51,200 ISO, and while it wasn't noisy or grainy, the noise reduction certainly seemed to make the shot less than ideal, and a lot of filmmakers would say it was unusable. However, Philip did note that when shooting in RAW and using an external recorder, he was able to capture the footage without the internal noise reduction applied. And while the footage did come out grainy and noisy, he was able to apply noise reduction in post for a much cleaner and usable end product. For wedding filmmakers, low light and high ISO performance is a big factor. Almost all throughout a wedding day, you'll find yourself shooting in less than ideal lighting conditions. And having the ability to shoot clean video in darker locations is absolutely essential to a fast workflow. In wedding filmmaking, we can't just pack our lights around with us everywhere we go, especially if you're filming by yourself. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on this camera and doing my own testing, and it's very possible that in full production models, Sony may have added the ability to tweak the noise reduction sensitivity or even turn it off completely if that's what we want to do. Number 4, new menus. I won't spend much time on this, but suffice it to say that Philip tells us the new menus are intuitive and clear. They have touch functionality, and you can customize the menu and function menu to match your preferred workflow and needs. Number 5, flip screen and the LCD monitor. Philip notes that it's nice to have the flip screen, but it still isn't anything to brag about for Sony. While it has better resolution than its predecessors, it still isn't as good as Canon, Panasonic, or Nikon and all their competitor cameras. It has an auto flip feature that flips the image vertically whenever you swivel the screen, but it tends to engage this feature too early, not allowing for full control of how you want to view the screen from your preferred angle. This should be an easy fix for Sony to update in future with firmware. Until then, make sure you test out your most used positions while filming and getting a handle on how it will work best for you, so you're not fighting with this camera while you're filming for a client. Number 6, audio. Most wedding filmmakers don't put enough energy and thought into audio, myself included. And this is usually because it's hard to set up and monitor audio while still filming and concentrating on your shots. The A7S III has made this a little easier with their MI cold shoe mount. This allows you to record professional audio up to 4 channels with the right accessories directly into the camera, meaning you no longer need to have a separate audio monitoring gear. And while this certainly may not be the best option for your setup and workflow, it's nice to know that at least it's an option now. And I think a lot of wedding filmmakers will be able to step up their audio game with this camera. Number 7, IBIS, in-body image stabilization. I've always thought it's tough to judge the quality of IBIS from other people's footage. There's something about knowing the extent of your own ability to stabilize the camera, whether you're using handheld or a gimbal, and then matching up that stabilization with what the camera is doing. But Philip does a great job here of showing us what a typical walk-in shot would look like with IBIS turned off, IBIS turned on, and then with the additional active stabilization mode that digitally stabilizes the footage using a 10% crop on the sensor. From what Philip's footage can tell us, I think there will be a slight improvement from what we're used to as Sony users, but not quite as good as Panasonic's or Canon's. Filming weddings can be really fast-paced, and with my style of really smooth and cinematic footage, I would love for the ability to handhold my camera more and get away from the gimbal. But I don't think I'm going to be able to do that quite yet. However, I am looking into building a rig with a cage and side handles. This may give me a little bit more natural stabilization, but I'll have to do some tests and get back to you with that. Number 8, post-stabilization. Still in the same vein as IBIS, but this is new, so I thought it deserved its own section. Now, most of us are used to using Warp Stabilizer in Premiere Pro or the Stabilizer in Final Cut X or DaVinci Resolve, and while those can be really effective for some scenarios, they take time, processing power, and they're almost always less than perfect. And Philip says that with the gyroscopic information the camera records with the clip from the A7S III, you can use Sony's Catalyst software to stabilize that clip in a much more efficient and effective way. And as Philip explains, the other softwares have to analyze the clip to see how it needs to be stabilized, while Sony's software knows exactly how to stabilize the clip based on the information from the camera. And I think this is going to be a really awesome feature. This is really going to increase the quality of a lot of people's footage, and it could be the answer to my desire to get away from my gimbal. Number 9, overheating. While there have been some reports of the Sony a7s III overheating by just a couple of YouTubers, with pre-production models, mind you, overall, most people who had the chance to test the camera came to the same conclusion, that most people in most conditions will have minimal to no overheating issues. And Philip even goes as far as to put a heat lamp on the camera to test it out. Using the highest quality S&Q mode at 120 frames per second, he was able to film for 24 minutes at about 113 degrees Fahrenheit before the camera shut down due to overheating. After about a 5-minute cool down, he started again and was able to film another 11 minutes. Now, I can't imagine any real-world situations where this would be representative of, unless you needed slow motion set up on an erupting volcano, and even then, I think 30 minutes would be enough for that. In real-world conditions and filming, Philip said he had no overheating issues on any of the codecs on any of the recording modes. That is good to know. Number 10. Autofocus. Philip sings the praises of Sony's autofocus and the tracking competency. However, he is a little salty about no animal eye autofocus in the camera. So if that upsets you too, he actually made a petition that you can go check out. But the autofocus really is one of the best in the industry. It even allows you to adjust and tweak the sensitivity and speed to dial in the best settings for your filming situation. I am so excited about using this for wedding filmmaking. While I've always been a big proponent of using autofocus for weddings, and I honestly rely on it heavily in my workflow, I've never trusted the subject or face tracking. I'll usually revert to spot focus and change my focusing spot manually using the touch to focus feature on the back monitor. And with updates to the software, I think wedding filmmakers are going to have a much easier time managing the focus in their shots now. One caveat that I'll mention: Philip does point out that when using an external monitor, Sony doesn't allow you to use the touch to focus feature. Now, this is extremely disappointing, but as he mentions, there could be an update in a firmware later on. And honestly, I hope this is one of the first updates, because that would make using an external monitor so much easier and all around a better experience. Number 11, the last one, raw video. Philip doesn't say a ton about raw video from this camera, other than it's really nice. He mentions that Atomos is working to enable recording of the a7s III's 16-bit RAW, but its Ninja 5 recorder will convert it to a 12-bit recording, which is still amazing. I personally am not that familiar with workflows for RAW recording, but what I do know is that it will produce a higher quality image and allow for more direct control of the image. Now, this actually could be a bad thing if you don't know what you're doing. I imagine this will be a similar situation as when a lot of people started shooting with S-Log, but were ultimately disappointed because it was so hard to color grade the image back to where they wanted it. Now, sometimes using Cine profiles work better for a faster and more dependable workflow. The same might be true for filmmakers who try RAW for the first time. There will be a huge learning curve to get the image to where you want it to be. As a wedding filmmaker, I would definitely not film using RAW until you have the opportunities to test it out along with post-production on smaller projects or your own test. But don't worry, the 10-bit 422 codecs will give you the boost in image quality that you're wanting. As I do more research on RAW and find good resources for learning post-production workflows, I'll be sure to update and make videos about that on my channel. So there you have my quick review of Philip Bloom's Sony a7s III review. Again, this video is such a joy to watch. I don't think I've ever laughed or smiled more while watching a gear review video. And to Philip, thank you again for all of your hard work, your humor, your inspiration. If you have time, seriously, go check out Philip's channel and make sure to look in the description of his video for ways to support him. Thank you for watching. If you're excited about this camera or you're interested in wedding filmmaking, be sure to subscribe to my channel and enable notifications because there will be a lot more content coming out over the next several months. And remember to request your free Sony a7s III guide at freecameraguide.com. Also, tell me in the comments what new feature you think will help you the most as a filmmaker. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.